Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the Topps total sets for football. Now, in 2002, Topps created what might be considered the last true card set for kids. These were cards that were not intended to be for major value. They were done with a pretty wide print run. They didn't have much in terms of inserts or with parallels, so there really wasn't much of value in these sets. Now, they all had signature cards in them. Every single set had it, but they almost never had stars in it. So these were cards that were not intended for the value end of the market. I don't know how well that would have worked in 2020 and 2021 with the chaos going on. I think it would have gotten sucked right in, but it's nice to have these kinds of sets that are basically just very simple and intended for kids, just intended to make it easy for kids to come in and be collectors. And the sets didn't even try to do anything complex. They don't have any subsets in them at all. These are just straightforward 550 card sets with just players. That's straight through. And 2002, they started in baseball, and then they did hockey a little bit later in the year. And then in 2003, that's when they started football. And hockey wouldn't hold up. The basketball set they did, that didn't really hold up. With baseball, they were able to get 4 years out of it. But football was the only one they were actually able to get 5 years out of it. So they were able to make a run from 2003 all the way through 2007. It worked well enough for them. So it actually gives us a lot to look at, but we also get to see how they were constantly changing the set in small ways. They really wanted to keep the set at its core, and really the first set is very similar to the last set. There are some evolutions that have been made, but all the things you see in the first set, you see in the last set, and I've got a lot of respect for that. So these card sets, like I said, they are all just player cards, every single one, and the set is broken into 3 portions. There is the single veteran cards, there is the dual and triple cards, so basically it's 2 or 3 panels of individual players on each card, and then there are the single panel rookie cards. And that's pretty much how they did it. And because of the dual and triple cards, they actually have the ability to get a lot more players into the set. So a 550 card set, you get 800 players in that set. So the big advantage to the set is that you get a lot of players that you wouldn't normally get cards of. And this gives a fan of a team a lot more opportunity, because you could get potentially the entire starting lineup. You could get cards of players you would never otherwise see. And it also gives some interesting opportunities for players who wouldn't otherwise have cards show up in other sets that may pop up, kind of like what happened in the mid-90s with Pacific with Ben Coates and Adam Vinatieri's rookie cards. It had that quality to it. So there are some cool cards that pop up, either because it's the only card a player ever had, or it's one of the very few, and possibly just the only rookie that occurred for a player. So that's kind of what the set brings, but it really doesn't bring much else, and that's kind of the beauty of it in a pure sense, but it's also kind of the detraction of it in terms of how you want to get excited about these cards. So the cards themselves are pretty basic. They started off with kind of a retro look in 2003. It's got enough modern that it doesn't really look retro, but it has a feel to it. Now on the card back, the card back does look very modern. It's kind of kitsch in a way, but the whole point was the cards were supposed to be kind of fun. The dual and triple panel cards were basically just, instead of completely splitting them out and making them like individual cards, they just kind of split the window. And with the later cards in 2007, it got kind of fun how they did it, but it was pretty basic at the most basic level. And then the rookie cards just look like the regular cards with a rookie note on it. They did do a parallel for the set, and it was silver. The whole card set was done in silver. The checklists were not, but all the regular cards were done in silver, all 550 of them. So that is a very basic chase level that you're able to do. And then they have 3 inserts, well 4 inserts including the signatures. So they do have signature cards, like I noted. Every single year the signature card looks different. And then they have 3 basic insert sets, which are award winners. And only in 2003 do they have the date on it. The date is 2002, referring to the 2002 season that the 2003 cards are looking at. So don't get thrown off from that, but it's the only year they put the year on it. And then they have total production, and then they also have total Topps. And total Topps is a little tough to remember the name because the main set is Topps Total, so the insert is total Topps. And you've already heard me kind of flutter on it. I may make the mistake later on, so just understand that it's total Topps. So that's basically how they built these cards. And they, again, like I said, they do that all 5 years. In 2004, they added another parallel set. This was first edition. Now, this is one of only 2 years where they did first edition. I know that the Beckett says that there was one in 2005. They did not put any into any packs in 2005. It's just there are only 2 years. 2004 and 2007 have first edition cards, and they're of the entire set. So you have first edition cards and you have silver cards for 2004. The set is, they basically went with more of a square look, and the cards were starting to look a little bit more modern, still a hint of retro quality to it, but they were definitely trying to get these cards to hold up a little bit more on their own. They still have the dual panel, the 3 panel, and they also have the rookies in it, as they always did. But a note about this set is it's only 440 cards. This is the only year they did 440. Every other year they did 550 cards. Also, in looking at the checklist cards look exactly the same as the regular cards. It's just they use a different picture. But there's no mistaking it when you flip it over to the back and you see that on the back it has a team checklist. And that's what these are. They're team checklists. So there are 32 checklists, one for every single team. And it really kind of leans into the fact that this set, I think, really was intended more for people who wanted to do team building as opposed to just collecting sets in more of a typical way. And again, I happen to think that that's an advantage to it. These are cheap cards. They're presented as cheap. The sets are built as cheap. And I think it works a lot better in that way because it does give us this little corner of the market where we're able to go in and just enjoy it for what it is. They also had the 3 insert sets. They had their award winners. They also had their top total production, and they had their total tops. And the signature cards here, the signature cards look a little bit better than had been done in the previous year, and that is basically what they did for 2004. In 2005, things started to get a little bit more interesting. So they didn't do the first edition, they only did the silver cards. The card design itself got a little bit more modern. It looked a lot better. To me, this is really the best of all the 5 sets. And the cards, they have their dual panel, their triple panel, their rookies. They went through the whole run of doing these. And then the checklists actually are a little bit different than the regular cards. They're smooth as opposed to the, not rough, but kind of a textured surface of the main card. So that was something that was kind of unique about these cards. They also came in tins. Specifically, 2 teams came in tins. They had the Steelers and they had the Packers. And the tins were just for the 2 teams with just the team cards in them. So inside, they have the whole team set. So these cards are actually a little bit more common than the others because they had a separate print run just for these 2 teams. And then they had a jumbo card that was also featured in, and they were thoughtful enough to put a whole bunch of styrofoam in the tin so that everything sits in there. It doesn't mean that the cards are going to come out perfectly. These will, but the large cards can still kind of get a little bit dinged, which is unfortunate. But that is something they did for 2005 and only for 2005. And like I said, it's just the 2 teams. It's the Steelers and it's the Packers. They had the typical inserts. They had their award winners. They had their total production, and they had their total tops. They also had their signatures, but they did add another insert set in here. This is their relics set. And they only did it for 2 years. They did it for 05 and 06. So this was an addition to the year, and that is basically 2005. 2006 is where they started to get kind of carried away. Now, the first thing that they did was they got rid of the white border. So that was a unique move that they made. They also simplified the borders. They basically were stuffing the text into the border, which is, it is what it is. But this was a set that was built around parallels. They didn't just go with 1 or 2 parallels. They actually went with 5 parallels. So that means that there are 6 copies of every single card. The green border is the basic card. And all these parallels, of course, go across the entire span of the set. And the green parallel is the basic. Now, the silver is not the most common of these parallels. So that was a different change that they made. In this case, their platinum blue is the basic level. And then the next step up is red. And then silver comes after that, and then they have gold, and then they have a black border card that's the most rare. And those are all numbered out of 50. So every single one is serial numbered out of 50 with gold foil down the bottom on the back. And that's how they set it up. Green, and then you have the parallels of blue, red, silver, gold, and then black. And again, the checklists do not factor into that. They're their own standalone entity. Most of the cards in this year are smooth. In fact, they have kind of a matte finish on the back. But some of the cards do come with the ridges. So they have kind of a rough front and they have the ridges on the back. but it's not a parallel. It's just a series of cards in this set have a different type of card stock than the rest. So you'll run into that, but understand that it's supposed to be that way. It's not a variation. And then the checklists are also done that same way. They have kind of a rough front, so the checklists don't read like most of the cards in the set. And every single pack came with a turn back the clock advertisement for something they were doing at that time. So you'll see that. It's not collectible, but it shows up. And then they had their insert cards. They had the award winners, they had the total production, they had the total tops, they had the relics again, and they had the signature cards. But they added another insert set. This was Sports Illustrated Kids. This is the most basic level of inserts you're going to get. This is the first set that you're going to collect. And they only did it for this 1 year. So they were really playing around with the idea and trying to figure out how to make it continue to sustain. They were already running on ether. The whole concept of the set was starting to run a little bit thin, but it was nice that it was still around. Now they had one more year, which was 2007. And here they continued with the green border. The design of the card got a lot more modern here. And so they were playing around a lot more. So the basic cards they look nice, but it's cool when you look at the double and the triple cards, because here they're actually making the cards a lot more interesting in this regard. And I like the way that they were going. I wish they'd made a 2008 set, because I'd love to see what they would have come up with. But this is how they did the cards, and they had the same 6 parallels, except they added a 7th. Like I said, they did another first edition for this set. Now the basic parallels follow the typical. You have the platinum blue, you have the red, you have the silver, the gold, and then you have the black, which is numbered out of 50. But the first edition is a copper. That's officially what it is. The problem is it looks exactly like the gold. I mean, not 100%. You got to look at the two to really know the difference. But the main way you can tell is that it says first edition down at the bottom. There's a little black logo with first and then edition. And so if it has that, it's the first edition. If it doesn't have it, it's the gold card. But it really is tough to tell the difference between them if you don't have the ability to compare, or if the image quality of what you're looking at isn't really holding up. They did checklists again, as they did every single year, and they closed the set out with the 4 insert sets that they had in the first year. So you have your award winners, you have your total production, you have your total tops, and you have your signature card, you have your autograph. So they have all of those in the set, and so it's really interesting how they went through the years where they made the same set every single year. They made little tweaks here and there in terms of mainly design, obviously, but they would add an insert set, or they would add relics, and they kind of played around. And especially when they got into the parallels, it was fun to see how they were building it. The problem is there's so many cards in these sets, and there's nothing that's really engaging about the set. So this is the kind of thing where you either go in to try to complete one set just to have it, or you go all in and you really push and push and push to try to get these parallels. That's pretty much how it works. But it's a fun thing to discover, simply because if you're into just sitting there and ripping through a box and going through the process and discovering an interesting card here or there, this is a really cool set to discover. It's not going to give you a lot of return, most likely. It's possible that you could, but most likely you're not going to. But again, it was designed for kids, and they really need to make sure that they get more sets out there for kids, because kids easily get walled out of the industry. They're supposed to be the industry. That's who it's supposed to be addressed to. And if kids have just a little corner and then the adults have the rest of it, I'm fine with that, but at least make sure kids have a corner. And the best way to do it is to make sure that you don't give adults too much of a reward to really entice the money-making scheme that really destroys card collecting, in my opinion. It's fun to include value as a part of how it all works, but you have to be able to take a vacation from it and have a place where you can just enjoy a card set for what it is. And that's what these sets did. So I hope that we get to see something created like this again. If it's Panini, good luck. They're definitely not going to do it. But Topps may come up with this again if they have the opportunity. I really hope so. So at any rate, that's basically a look at the whole Topps total for football. And I hope that you learned something from it. I hope you subscribe if you haven't done so. And thank you very much for watching.